Last night we talked to a family who's in the process of selling their home in the Wairarapa to move out of the area, as there is no special school or even special unit within a mainstream school in the entire Wairarapa region. Not one of the 28 primary schools in the area want to establish one, and the Ministry of Education has no plans to build one. So that family is leaving now rather than placing their daughter in a mainstream school because they instinctively feel she won't get the education she needs and indeed deserves. Tansy Oliver's son Charlie, who has autism, went to a mainstream school in Carterton for 2 years, but as Tansy explained, they too ended up moving because instead of moving forward in his education, he began to really go backwards.
He sort of coped for a while, but then in 2016 he just went so backwards, and he just wasn't functioning at all. And to see his very precious speech disappear was very difficult. And we had Oars funding, so we did have a wonderful teacher aide, but that wasn't completely full-time because Oars funding never is. But he never had a speech therapist. He never had any of those interventions from the ministry. And yeah, all those skills were just disappearing because his anxiety was just huge.
So why didn't he have the things he needed?
I think part of it is that, the condition with autism is that social interaction and the sensory input is so difficult for him that actually mainstream doesn't suit him, and that's okay, that doesn't mean that he is any less than anyone. It just means that he needs a specific environment.
Right, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
No, actually, that you just said in the Wairarapa, and I was just going to say, but that specific environment didn't exist in the Wairarapa, right? So that entire region couldn't offer you one specific environment, and none of them.
No one, not a single one has a learning support separate class or or what's better as a unit within the school, and there's obviously no special schools, and the ministry can't impose a unit onto a school, so they can't force a school to, they say, but I'm sure they could make it more convincing and more attractive.
Yes, with funding, with appropriate funding. Right, absolutely.
That's right.
So
absolutely,
there you are in the Wairarapa, which, and you're in Carterton, right, or near Carterton?
Yes. In Carterton, yeah, and we'd bought a house there specifically with, big backyard for him and my other son.
And the lovely thing about Carterton is not only does it have a great climate, hot summers and lovely cool winters, but you can afford to buy a home there, can't you?
That's right, and that's exactly what we'd done because we needed me at home. Special needs families often have to have a parent not in work, so it needs to be affordable.
But to educate Charlie, you had to sell your Carterton home?
Yes. So we had to sell a house, and that was there were no questions. That for us, he needed to be in an environment where he felt safe and he wasn't anxious, and so that our Charlie could come back to us. And so there was no question that we needed to do that. But it's very hard to sell your house, and we've had to rent in the zone around his current school.
Sorry, can I just pick up on that word? You're renting now.
Sorry.
You're renting now, are you?
Yes, so now we are renting a house in Johnsonville, and we can't afford to buy into the Johnsonville housing market because it's quite different to the Carterton housing market, and with only my husband working, and that's okay because that's Johnsonville really was the only option. There aren't many schools that provide a unit, and Johnsonville are amazing, and they had a place for him, and he's got this wonderful environment now where his speech is incredible. He's just come so far, and they're an amazing school who they see it as a valuable thing to have our children. They see them as not a financial burden, but as something that actually brings value to the school. And it's a really wonderful way of looking at it. I think more schools could look at it like that.
Are there other children whose families have had to move from elsewhere to Johnsonville to get this kind of education?
Yes. There are a number of families who also have had to move.
So what do you say about education for children like Charlie and the children that we have covered many times on Checkpoint now, is there enough support for them?
No, I feel it's in a critical situation. I've worked in education. Education in general is severely underfunded and relies mostly on the goodwill of amazing teachers and support staff and everybody who helps. And, you know, our unit's wonderful, but it still could definitely do with more funding and more specialist time. But education for children with special needs is at an absolute tipping point. Actually, we're past that. There's so many hurdles in the way and so many schools that are not welcoming. And the Ministry of Education has had a history of not being particularly helpful in some areas. You know, things like they don't offer any one-to-one therapy. So unless you're in a special school, even with OARS funding, you will not get any one-to-one speech therapy or occupational therapy or physiotherapy. They will only give advice to the school or the teacher. So we've got, you know, thousands of students in New Zealand who don't receive speech therapy and they're non-verbal. It's just shocking. And I don't think people realise that, you know, it's a human right to be able to communicate, and to not have anyone to assist you in that is, you know, it really is criminal.
That's Tansy Oliver, Charlie's mum. Tansy said families were heartened to hear Associate Education Minister Tracy Martin say on Checkpoint last night that parents know what is best for their children, and they are hopeful the new government will make some progress in the area of specialist education.